It's time to talk music, audio gear, and anything else that crosses our minds. I'm Mark.
And I'm Peter.
And welcome to the Hurton Audio Podcast.
So, this week we've got a very, very unexpected treat from U2, who's dropped the new song Atomic City ahead of their Las Vegas shows at the new venue. They've been sort of spearheading called The Sphere, or I'm sure it has a more
they're doing
U2
UV, which is also like Actung Baby themed, isn't it?
Yes, it's the anniversary, one of the anniversaries of Actung Baby. I want to say 30th.
And the stage is crazy. Obviously, everybody's seen like the videos of the outside of the dome.
The outside of the dome does look insane. Like if you watch the music video for Atomic City, it shows you a lot on the inside, but at the very end, there's like a teaser of like a baby in a helmet.
Yeah,
and it's weird, but like cool weird. But like I can't believe that's just in LA.
Like the day after they put the video out, they had an emoji, a series of emojis on a yellow, basically dome that was all around Las Vegas, because everywhere you looked at the dome, it was just an emoji smiling or crying or whatever. And just the thought of opening a hotel window and then seeing a massive emoji, like it almost looks like, well, I mean, it looks so unreal because of how big it is in like a sort of skyline.
The scale sort of doesn't feel right, does it?
But it's very clever. But obviously in the video, we see the first look at the inside of the venue, which equally looks weird because basically there's like a quarter sphere of lights and LEDs sort of in the background, and the band are playing on this very tiny circle podium in front of it.
Yeah. Well, you say tiny, it's comparatively tiny. Yes.
Yeah, comparatively tiny from the audience perspective.
Probably a nice size stage for the band. But the song, Atomic City, I'm under the assumption that it's from a forthcoming album that they alluded to on the Apple Music Zane Lowe interviews, Bono on the Edge, when they was talking about this sort of project. But the song is sort of like how did Bono describe it? Like a 70s rocker sort of situation.
So it sounds to me as well like they're definitely continuing the sound development that they was using on Songs of Innocence and Experience, because the song reminds me of like Cedarwood Road and the tracks like that off Songs of Innocence. It's in that same vein where they're like taking influence from the Ramones and stuff that they was talking about, like the song The Miracle of Joey Ramone. That they're sort of like leaning into that sort of style.
I completely agree. I think it's because There was doing like a very, very forward thinking. It's hard to describe it because U2 sort of pioneered a thing that then became popular, whereas now you sort of hear them being a bit more nostalgic in the music, as you say. They're sort of going back to their pasts. Maybe it's because they've done a lot of reflection and stuff and sort of started to work with older sort of song arrangements. I mean, it's still very much U2, and it's not exactly a pastiche of anything, but like you say, there is that. I mean, I think the new song sounds very reminiscent of Call Me by Blondie, just melodically.
Yeah.
But that'll be just because it's probably in the same key or the same top note on the start of the chorus with a similar phrasing, which just, to me, it just says Blondie, call me. But it's, that's the only bit that does specifically do that. But also, you've got Edge doing like a wah-wah guitar solo on this.
Oh, yeah, which is quite out of the ordinary from what they've been doing previously, because they said they wanted the Edge to be super rocky, and Bono said on the Apple Music thing with Zane Lowe that he wanted to show that the band could still be a rock band.
Yeah, and it's very much, I suppose they've gone for that classic timeless rock sound on this. They haven't tried to reinvent the wheel, but they also haven't like stuck in a box specifically. So it comes across as sounding like it's fresh but very nostalgic at the same time. It's a hard one to describe because I feel like it's both and neither.
Yeah, and it's what you would expect them to do, but also what you would not expect them to do, because I was expecting them to do something that's very different from Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience. And they've sort of put out a single that isn't throwing you off the scent, really. Like we talked about a lot of bands like, say, the 1975, putting part of the band out to sort of do like that shock factor. But U2 have basically put out a track that you go, no, that's pretty much what they've been doing in a good way. But, you know, it's like a continuation, like I say, and it's not, I mean, I was hoping for maybe something a little bit more left field and something that we've not heard U2 do. But this is great as well.
I think that sort of them songs will be coming on the album, but I think this is like a soft introduction to the album. Like you say, maybe they've gone for like a connection from Songs of Experience to this, so it isn't, you know, so it sort of flows. I don't know if Atomic City will have any narrative connection to Songs of Experience with the previous albums being sort of connected in that sense.
Yeah, I would definitely, like, if we're talking about what we want to see from U2 on the new album, I would love to see them do songs in the vein of City of Blinding Lights and Streets of No Name. Just that, like, classic U2 delay guitar sort of weightless intro and chorus and stuff. That would be really interesting.
The anthemic, but also the ones that where really some of the songs really capture your imagination because they tend to pile on the effects.
Yeah, I would definitely like to see Edge get all of his racks out and just like give us a bizarre guitar tone that's ethereal and like weightless. And I'm hoping that there is some of that on this album because that is definitely what I really like about U2, you know. Just that's, or should I say that's what to me feels quintessentially U2 about how to dismantle an atomic bomb as an album, is that it seems like something that only U2 could do, particularly those first 5 songs off the record.
But also, speaking of stuff only U2 could do, what this song does sound like is a live band playing together. And I think that is probably the strength. I imagine that's what they thought the strength of the song was for the first song to put out.
Yeah.
Because you can sort of hear it's full of drum fills, it's full of little licks and little sort of deviations, and it's like a shuffle as well, so it feels more live with it having a bit more innate swing to it than a standard sort of rhythmic beat.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't feel sequenced in any way, which I think is probably what they're going for when they're trying to sell you on U2 as a live act, is that they're not saying, you know, if they came out with like a remix essentially,
or a
Bono
super
singing,
processed
song. It would feel like, oh well, this is very different and very modern, but is this what you're going to want to see live when you go to see U2 UV in the Sphere?
Songs like Invincible come to mind, which is a great song, but I don't think it showcases U2 at their sort of live potential, as you're saying. And maybe they're sort of saying, you know, there's a lot of sequenced and not even necessarily sequenced, but more electronic sounding music out there. So I suppose maybe U2's thought is, why would we do that when we are a 4-piece band and we can sound like a 4-piece band?
Yeah, it's interesting thinking about what U2's sound has been in the last 10 years, because like we say with like the Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience albums, this is very much continuing from that, but also the songs that are on those 2 albums, they sort of have those, like we was talking about U2-isms on the other episode of the podcast, but they are definitely rooted a little bit more in the past and less in the future sonically. Like you were saying about them being nostalgic and looking backwards, that's where the music sounds as well. Like they're not trying to push too many boundaries like they were, say, on A Beautiful Day, where it's a very modern sounding record is a Beautiful Day. It's not.
Yes.
It doesn't sound like anything that come out before the year 2000. And whereas a lot of these songs that they're bringing out are songs that you could imagine some bands in the 70s playing. It sounds like a song that you've heard before, but you just haven't heard it like this, you know. That's sort of my take on it. Whereas, like you say, when we listen to, say, All That You Can't Leave Behind, it's a very cutting edge record, not just sonically, but also in the way the songs and the riffs are constructed. Like with Elevation, you don't feel like, even now, I feel like Elevation's a very unique sounding song.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. And also, just to mention, Songs of Surrender obviously goes in with this theme that we've been talking about of the previous couple of studio efforts from U2 being sort of linked together. You have Songs of Innocence, Songs of Experience, and Songs of Surrender, totaling probably somewhere just over 60 tracks between them. So they've been very thematic of recent. So is it that they're luring us in with this familiar U2, familiar modern U2 sound with Atomic City so they can break our expectations on the next single or the next songs that come out?
Yeah.
Which would be the opposite of what we've seen by most bands where they put their sort of more experimental left field single out first and then work their way backwards to saying, well, there's some of us on there, like we normally sound.
I'll tell you what is really good about Atomic City, though. It's about just getting a new song from a band like U2, a band as established and as long going as U2. Because U2 are in a strange position where they still have the 4 original members.
Yes.
And like now in 2023, not even ZZ Top has the 3 original members. It's very, very difficult for a band that's been going as long as U2 to maintain those original 4 members. And what's so exciting about a band like U2 still putting out music is that it is still U2 and everybody that was and has ever been in U2.
There's no what ifs, is there? There's no what if Edge didn't leave or Bono didn't leave or Larry or Adam. I know what you mean, Mike. They're all in it still. And I know, I believe Larry's having some sort of performance issues with it, like his back and muscle stuff. So he's not on the live shows, I think they were saying, on the Apple Music stuff, but he plays on the album, or at the very least, from what we know, on that song, which is great because it would have been a real shame, I think, if they would have had to do some sort of substitution. Because like you said, U2 are in a very, very unique and almost incomprehensible position of having their original lineup so long after.
And the other thing with U2 is U2 haven't really had a long hiatus of any kind. They've always give a steady sort of trickle of albums. Like even when most bands falter in the 2010s, U2 still delivered 3 albums.
Yeah.
Which is, 3 albums a decade is about right, really, for consistency. They just seem to have kept that consistency throughout the entire career, where most bands, say a band like ZZ Top, that maintained their lineup, they put out Mascalera in 2003 and didn't put out La Futura till like 2014 or 2015. That's what it felt like to me. It might have been 2012. But like I say, U2 have just kept that momentum rolling. I mean, even Bon Jovi in comparison, because U2 and Bon Jovi were in a very similar place in the year 2000 to 2005. Even Bon Jovi have sort of slowed up on releasing music recently, but
yes,
it feels like U2, they still are there, and they're still, for as much like jerks as U2 get, they're still a very popular band, and they're still in the limelight.
They are, yes.
They've not been pushed out of the limelight. They're not irrelevant. They're still relevant somehow. I don't know how they're managing to be relevant, but they are. And I know maybe they've drummed up like PR from Songs of Innocence being put on everybody's iPhones and stuff. But like I say, when you're looking at the releasing, say from 2000 onwards, from All You Can't Leave Behind, they put out an album from 2000, 2004, 2009, 2014, 2017, and then 2023.
So it is 2 albums across the 2010s, but it sort of feels like 3 because there's deluxe songs on Songs of Innocence and deluxe songs. Because Songs of Innocence was that classic one where they gave it away and everybody got mad. I remember being ecstatic when that press conference happened and going up, running up and opening up iTunes and going, oh my God, I've got a new U2 album to listen to and I don't even have to pay for it. This is so cool because I buy music.
I remember downloading it before Apple actually got it onto my iPod. And I had to actively find it to download it for free.
Definitely a 1 in a million reaction to that one, apparently, where
Yeah.
Most people were very mad, but I remember loving it. But point being is that Songs of Innocence, obviously it came out, and then there was later, so it came out on everybody's phones for free, which was obviously divisive and everything, but it still happened. Then later they put out like an extended version of Songs of Innocence, which had a couple of new tracks and a lot of alternative versions. So it sort of feels like 3 albums, because there's like 21 songs on there, and then there's like 17 songs on Songs of Experience. So by comparison, that it's still a lot of songs.
But also, like, Songs of Surrender come out in 2023, which is only this year. Did it come out in January?
Yeah.
And they're teasing their new album for 2024. So you're talking about a back-to-back release. Now, Songs of Surrender's a tricky one when it comes to talking about it in a discography's context, because it is a reimagining of songs almost in the vein of a greatest hits album. You know, it's a compilation. At the end of the day, they've re-recorded it, but you could class it as a compilation of pre-existing songs.
Unlike, I suppose, one of the other comparisons would be the way I suppose Taylor Swift's doing it, where they've changed stuff, but they have added parts to songs as well. So it's not a straightforward compilation, because when you listen through, the arrangements are completely, like, wildly different. But like songs like Walk On go from being Walk On to Walk On Ukraine, and some songs have extra verses and some songs have extra chorus bits and a different refrain. So it's a very odd release, but I suppose that's what they had time to do. I am under the assumption that that's their COVID effort, hence why they had 40 songs on instead of 10. But because obviously it came out in 2023 as well, so they've got to have been doing something whilst they was all not able to tour. So I believe that will have been it.
But like we say, just for sheer consistency, U2 have outlasted a lot of bands, almost all the bands. I mean,
1980 on the dot, Boy came out.
Yeah,
the first album.
Yeah, so we're talking nearly 45 years. We're sort of almost towards 45 years from the debut album. Obviously, the band was a band before Boy came out as well. But it's just very interesting to see, because a lot of music fans don't get this catalogue from their favourite band. There's a lot of bands like Guns N' Roses or Boston that just fizzle out very quickly, or in both those bands' cases, actually, very slowly. Like, those bands are both still going, but they still only put out 5 albums a piece or whatever. So it's like, it's a tough one. So you have the one, like we say, the quality versus quantity argument.
But also, you have bands like, say, Queen, Led Zeppelin, and so forth, where they've had a member die prematurely or unexpectedly.
And the tragedy has just ended the discography's run, basically.
Yeah, because, and they've done... it's hard to describe. Like, could Queen have gone on with a different singer? Probably not. Not in the same capacity. Like, I know they have touring members and they've done the Cosmos Rocks, but like as a unit, this is what you're saying about no member changes. That's what keeps it together as a band.
Even if Queen got a second singer, and say when they got Paul Rodgers, which they made an album, say they continued making albums and they picked up the momentum and they had 10 albums with Paul Rodgers, and I don't know, do they have 15 albums, roughly? 15 albums with Freddie Mercury.
Something there.
You would be able to have like the Van Hager and Lee Roth sort of argument where, yes, they both did roughly 4 albums, so the band sort of, it has 2 distinct eras, but both of which are as popular as each other, definitely commercially. Whether the fans prefer one or the other, you know, Sammy Hagar had 4 number 1 albums with Van Halen. David Lee Roth had 4 albums. I don't know whether there was number 1 or not, with Van Halen as well.
Originally.
Yeah, so that means that they kept that going. Now, obviously, U2 have had no member issues, but even for the bands that have had member issues, they haven't been able to sustain just the consistency of releases. And it's really nice to get an album like A Different Kind of Truth, which isn't even on Spotify if you go look for it. They've pulled it off, clearly. Like I say, it's...
Just a small correction, 6 albums with Lee Roth.
6, was it?
According to Spotify. Yeah, there's The two I think you forgot are Women and Children First and then Fair Warning.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that's fair. That is
Just
fair.
want to put that out there so the Van Halen fans don't attack us.
Yeah. But yeah, it's one of those things where U2 fans should be very happy because they're in a very unique position where they have their favourite band continuing on with new music, where they're still doing interesting and groundbreaking things. Like, from what I've seen, the U2 UV Sphere in Las Vegas is like a groundbreaking venue where they're doing not only a groundbreaking show, but they're able to make groundbreaking music videos, groundbreaking this, groundbreaking that, because they're in a unique position where they have the best tech.
And there's somehow, I don't think U2 have lost momentum somehow.
Yeah,
some people might be like, I don't even know who U2 are. But
yeah.
When you look at them as a career band, or even if you take them as a legacy band, most legacy bands, like you say, Mark, have had a full decade out and have had continuous member changes, or sometimes they've taken 20 years out and they reform with still sometimes
say like Europe come out in the mid 80s. They then get to 92 roughly 92. Peter's getting it up on Spotify so I can get the stats right, but say they form in roughly the early 80s. We have Europe's first album 83, right? They get up to Prisoners of Paradise, which is 1991. Is that, Peter?
Yeah, 91.
Yeah, then they stop. From 91, they don't come back to 2008.
6.
Sorry, I'm really far. I'm really far
from the screen.
So 2006. So that's a long time as Europe fan. Now, obviously, a lot of bands, Europe was one of them, where they just looked at grunge coming and went, "Yeah, we're done." Basically,
that's what the discography tells you.
So then they come back in 2008. Obviously, I haven't listened to 6. Sorry. 2006 they do Secret Society. I never listened to much of Secret Society, but in 2009, Last Look at Eden really put Europe back on the map, as far as I'm concerned, because that album was a fantastic album.
Masterpiece.
A masterpiece, I would say. And then they have a steady trickle of albums all the way through now. So we've got
and new music as well. We haven't mentioned
music. They've released a new song this weekend as well called Hold Your Head Up, which is quite good as well, keeping in the theme that they've been doing. And it's one of those things where you've got to think, like, from a fan perspective, people talk about, oh, well, I only like the first 3 albums, but you have more than 3 albums by a band like U2. Europe, I'm glad they've come back, because if they stopped in 91, I wouldn't have had Last Look at Eden. And I can say firmly that Last Look at Eden is my favourite Europe album. Yeah. Whether, commercially, however it did, is irrelevant. That album from start to finish is by far the best Europe album I've heard.
Yeah.
And because that album is forward thinking in the way it's produced, and then Bag of Bones and the albums that followed it, they took a little bit more of an organ approach, and they took it back to the 70s a little bit, even though Europe have like the synths, but all of the newer albums, they're sort of gone into that 70s rock, a bit Uriah Heepy really, in like the sound design, Deep Purple.
Seems to be a common factor with the bands. Like Bon Jovi's a great example, where they're on, I don't know if we've said this on one of the previous ones, they're on the cutting edge for so long, and they sort of hit a point where they're like, we're going to have to make the nostalgia trip and go back a bit.
But Bon Jovi got to Born Again Tomorrow, which is an EDM arrangement, an EDM track in a rock format. So they got that far. They got a lot further than most other bands that came out in the 80s. But like we say, with U2, you got to remember, they came out a few years before a lot of these 80s hair metal bands, and a lot of these bands that ended up having that 10-year hiatus in the 90s. Additionally, U2 got more popular in the 90s because they wasn't in that hair metal scene. When everybody stripped their music back, it was very easy for U2 to just, carry on doing what they was doing, because there was never that overly produced in the first place.
There wasn't. I would dare to say that they went more produced when grunge came out, and in like a bizarre way. Like,
U2 started in 1980, but they didn't peak till Beautiful Day, really. Like, I would say that was when they was everywhere. Those two albums in the 2000s, you couldn't avoid them. Now, maybe that's me because I saw it in the 2000s when it was bubbling up. But
to have Beautiful Day on, third on their Spotify stats, it's got 494 million streams, which the streams on any song that came out after Spotify sort of got to where it is now.
It's retroactive, isn't it? Because they've had to retroactively get those streams back from when Spotify wasn't out.
The streams sort of don't mean anything because Spotify wasn't a platform when these songs came out, so you don't get the initial hit, you don't really get the popularity, but still, For Beautiful Day, which is a song that is 20 odd years into U2's career, to outperform everything but two songs, being With or Without You, I Still Haven't Found What You're Looking For. Both classics, both, I imagine, from what I've heard, are just mega sync songs as well, which doesn't help.
I think the thing is those two songs is what propelled U2 to having that. It wasn't quite a one-hit wonder, it was a double with U2, because those two songs are a bit of a double act in a very weird way that a lot of bands don't end up having a pairing. They almost are a pair.
We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions is what comes to mind to me.
That type of situation. So, yeah, they're a very odd band for that. But like you say, Beautiful Day is right there. And like when we're looking, we can see Vertigo and the 9 spot, and I'm actually surprised it's that low. But once again, U2 have a lot of songs.
I don't know, they have strong songs though.
They have a lot of greatest hit songs, one of very few bands to actually make it to a greatest hits 2. A lot of bands have the greatest hits 1, but they never actually get to the greatest hits 2.
I'm looking forward to Nickelback's Greatest Hits Volume 2.
Yeah.
Because they've done the Volume 1.
Yeah.
It's like, look, you can't just do a Volume 1. Yeah. You can't. It's like Calvin Harris with Funk Soul Wives. It's like when you put the Volume 1, there's all of a sudden there's like a clock ticking down to say you've got to make a Volume 2. Because if you don't, everybody's going to say, well, where's Volume 2? You put a Volume 1 out.
Yeah, but once again, that's our thoughts on U2 in general, but also they're back with a brand new song, Atomic City, and that's really fun.
The album that it will be on, that's the thing to get excited about, because what potential gems does that album hold? I can't wait for it.
I'm just hoping that they do what I want them to do and not what everybody else wants them to do.
Or what they want to do.
Or what they want to do. I want them to do what I wish they would do.
This band's doing what they want to do. Screw them. It's one of those though. You want them to be happy doing what they want you to do, what they want themselves to do, but you want that to also be what sort of you want to see from them. Definitely.
Right, I've been Mark.
And I've been Peter.
Thanks for listening.